All right, so this is the famous Dr. Ephraim's Kente song. And yeah, it talks you through how the Kente is actually moving. And yep, it tells you the artistry involved in Kente weaving. Crow, 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 crow. He is what you see in the arm and the leg movement. Crow, he, crow, crow, crow. He, crow, crow, crow. Crow, he, crow, na yemido. Santi bon, you Okay, I've made up my own version of the song. Welcome to Bonwire. Let's go and learn the history of the Kente. Okay, let's sing it. Well, I've learned quite a lot of things. I've seen many things on my travels. I have also heard many things on my travels. I've not seen anything like the Asante Bonwire Kente. Asante Bonwire Kente Kwame Onimadeyo. Kwame is a great artist. The Kente, Abuelita, in Sunday the night, and it goes according to this rhythm. Crow, 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 crow. He, crow, crow. He, crow. Okay, we will learn more as we go along, but I hope you are geared ready for Bonwire and the story of the Kente.
Chinchini amame huniema. Chinchini amama tinsema. Asanti Bonwire Kente yidiemi hubido. Asanti Bonwire Kente yidiemi ntibido. Kwame Onimadeyo Kente na bodede. Ninsei, ninai, ninsedui, sedidieni. Crow, 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 he, crow, crow, he, crow, crow, na yemido, Bonwire Kente yuni, na yemido, na bomije. Crow, he, crow, he, crow, na yemido, Bonwire Kente yuni, na yemido, na bomije.
Welcome to this episode from Bonwire. So this video will be one we paraphrase in English because the original interview is actually in Twi. But welcome to the interview. We've got an uncle here who is going to tell us a little bit about the history of Bonwire. Bonwire is very well known for having craftsmen who focus on weaving, but they do other arts and crafts as well. It's the epicenter of arts and crafts in the region. And we do have our uncle who is going to tell us the history of Bonwire. And I'm going to do my very best to paraphrase exactly what he said in this interview and bring it to you in English so you can also understand. Well, wish me luck and let's get started.
Uncle, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We didn't have to
What is your name, please?
Eric.
Mr. Quatin Eric.
Please share with us some history of this gorgeous town, Bonwire. What have your ancestors told you that you can share with us on the channel today? Thank you very much. Okay, the people of Bonwire are mainly Asona people. The royals, anyway, are from the Asona family, the Asona clan. The Asona people are originally from Chibi. The people say Kibi in the eastern region. So our ancestors migrated here into Ashanti region from Chibi in the eastern region. And they have settled here for a good while. And we have plied our trade and we've built our history for over 400 years since we've been here in Bonwire, mainly weaving Kente. Please explain what you mean by a family, tribe, or clan. Okay. It is a family group In the Akan system, we have 8 matrilineal clans: Asuna, Oyoko, Bretu, Asechiri, Asene, Aguna, Eduana, and Ekwana. Every Akan belongs to one of these family clans. Bonwire, as I said before, belongs to the Asuna clan. Our ancestors came from Chebi Ahweniase in the eastern region. They left Chebi because there was a battle. Usually these things were over chieftaincy. They traveled from Chebi in pursuit of better outcomes and eventually arrived in the Ashanti region, a place close to the current Bonwire settlement called Echineso. When they arrived in Echineso, they actually stayed in Echineso for quite a bit. Everything was actually quite good in Echineso. The environment was conducive, food was available. It was good for our people, and so they stayed there for a while. The only problem was that there were periodic water shortages. And when water shortages came, that presented a challenge. Well, you know, in these parts, we depend on water. We need good drinking water, and also we need good rains for our crops in order to sustain ourselves. So water shortages in those times were very difficult for tribes and groups of people to manage. So of all the things that were presenting themselves here in Echineso, the greatest challenge actually became for water. One of our ancestors who lived in Echineso was a very prominent hunter. He was very well known in the area, and he went hunting one night and discovered a lot of rivers. This discovery was made in the heart of a virgin forest. It was in a brand new place, and he thought, oh my God, this could be a good solution to the problem we have at Echineso. Anyway, if we're going to test the water, then I'm going to fetch a bit first for my dog and see if it passes the test. So he did exactly that. He fetched some for his dog, it drank, it survived. So he knew the water was good enough to drink. So he drank some, went home, nothing happened. A few days later, he returned to where this river was. This river is River Abuelita. River Abuelita. The second time he came to the river, he actually got some fish from the river. He grilled the fish. He fed it to his dog, and the dog died instantly. Realization hit. The water is drinkable, but the fish is not edible. So till this date, the river is used to do everything else. We collect water from the river, but we do not eat fish from the river. Very interesting. The buffer test was done by the hunter using his dog, his companion. Most of these animals, dogs in particular, whatever kills a dog is likely to also kill his human companion. And that's why we don't eat fish from the river Abuelita. Let's talk next about the history of the name Bonwire. So we've said before that this particular location has 5 rivers, which made it very conducive to live here. It was very good for people who had water shortage problems to finally discover that there are 5 rivers that you can drink from. But the challenge here was with food, and so farming needed to be done. But the area was characterized by a particular plant called Enwire. The entire place was covered by Enwire. It is a funny plant with sticky leaves and many tiny thorns. And yeah, it's a well-known plant. Many people know it's irritating to farm Enwire because you will get a lot of scratches as you work through it. But that's beside the point. So remember the name of the plant Enwire. This farmer came here. The farmer decided, regardless of how difficult it was, he was going to settle here. So he actually built a settlement. And he moved from Echineso and came here to live. Obviously, he went back to see his friends and family. People saw that he was prospering. It was good where he was. When they had water, he probably sent them water. And people realized, well, maybe we should check out where he is. So when they left, they told people, I am also going to Bo Enwere. To Bo means to cut, to fell, to clear. I am off to go clear some Enwere to settle near the hunter. In Akan, Bo means to cut. Enwere is the name of the plant. So, Bo Enwere, clear Enwere, cut Enwere. Bonwire is from that expression. I am off to clear some Enwere for myself, to build a habitat where this guy seems to be doing well. That's the name Bonwire as you know now. Bo Enwere. Do Enwere. So the people came here, they had to clear Enwere to build their settlements. As expected, Bonwire became a thriving little settlement. People came to clear their Enwere, they settled, there was water, things were going on well. And we began to see suburbs in Bonwire. One prominent suburb in Bonwire was Ayowakesieso, the area around the big clay pot. This is the scene of the observation which started Kente weaving. So there were two hunters who were brothers, Opoku Kuragu and Kwache Amiao. They went for a hunt, and as they were hunting, Opoku Kuragu observed a spider. He observed the spider weaving its web, and it seemed so intricate, it was very fancy, so he called his brother to observe the technique. They stayed for a while, they observed the technique, went home, and came back 3 days later to see what the spider had done. And it was very intricate indeed. As they were observing it, they knew that they had seen something worth making a note of, and they knew it was something significant. They realized that this was something they could use to create something and make a name for themselves. So they went home and began to weave with raffia. Ayasetuma was the cloth that they were weaving. They were thin strips of cloth woven from edwa or raffia. As time went on, they refined the technique and they found slabs to make asasetuma, cloth of the land. This was wider than the ayasetuma and the technique was developing, but it was still woven out of raffia. As time went on, the Europeans arrived. And the ladies from Oyokoland, the ladies from Bonwire, went to Cape Coast. That became the hub of trade. So they went there to buy stuff and sell stuff. But as they were buying and selling, they observed some very interesting things about the white women. These European women had scarves, sometimes wrapped around their neck, sometimes on their heads. And they bought some of these scarves, they brought the scarves home, and that was a breakthrough moment because when they cut the edges of the scarf, they realized that it was actually woven out of cloth, it was woven out of thread. So they cut the edges of these scarves, they started pulling out the thread and started weaving using the technique that Opoku and Kwache had started. And they wove their first cloth. This was a black and white cloth, and they called it akromafufu, white hawk akromafufu. They had made a discovery. The technique was here already. People had actually started making looms. Bonwire was getting known for making these raffia cloth. Some people were buying it already, but it was raffia, it was not refined. But this cloth made out of the threads the European brought were finer, they were lighter, they were more colorful. And so they made akromafufu, and it was a breakthrough moment. Obviously, in Akan land, when you make something new, the first person to go show this to is the chief of the land. So they've made a discovery, they've created this wonderful thing out of the European threads, And so it became time to take this and present to the ruler of the land. Right, the chief of Bonwire at the time was Nana Bobie Ansa the first. So those who had woven this akromafufu took it to Nana Bobie Ansa. He looked at the cloth and he knew that they were onto something new. And as a custodian of the land, as somebody who knew tradition, he also realized that such amazing discoveries in Asante Kingdom could not be kept from the Otumfuo. It needed to be presented to Otumfuo, the ruler of Asante. So he made an appointment in Menchia to take the cloth and sent a delegation to visit with the Otumfuo and showed him their creation. Otumfuo liked it. He liked the intricate patterns. The thing is though, that akromafufu was a white cloth. Well, considering where Asanteman is, white cloth is probably not very practical. Also, Asante people are colorful people. So the Asante Hene Otumfuo told them to go and try create something which was more in line with the Asanteman colors. If you know the Asante Kotoko colors, then you would know that yellow is quite prominent. There are some greens, there are some blacks. And that is the theme that the weavers actually picked up from the conversation. So the weavers went back to Bonwire. They went to consult their brother-in-law, Nana Ota Kraban. He was very knowledgeable in colors. He understood dyes. He was also a hunter, but he knew which plants produced what liquids that could dye various colors. So he told them that the Driesika produced a lovely yellow color, and that could be used to dye yellow. The Dawuma produced a characteristic black dye. The Kasei produced a red dye, and the Pobri produced a green dye. When these things were used to soak the white linen, the white thread, the various colors were finally achieved. And the Kente, what would become the Kente, could begin to be woven. Obviously, at this point, a master craftsman was needed. Somebody who was very experienced in weaving and could get patterns in the cloth. So Nana Osei, a creative custodian, was consulted. He accepted to help, and he helped to produce this cloth with the colors that had been produced. The cloth was presented to Menchia. The Otumfuo was very happy with it. Otumfuo wanted to name the cloth in homage of those who had created it or originated it. Remember, the Otumfuo is from the Oyukwo clan. And if you remember from the story, the women who went to Cape Coast, the ones who went to Uba to go shop and brought the cloth, were actually people from the Oyukwo clan. Okay, so these are the aunties and sisters of the Otumfuo. And so he chose to name the cloth after the Oyukwo clan. It was called the Oyukoma Ntoma, a cloth of the Oyukwo women in homage. And it was only the Otumfuo who had permission to use this cloth in Asanteman. Only the Otumfuo. It is very typical of the Akans to reserve things for the Otumfuo. What the Otumfuo uses is only used by the Otumfuo. Nobody else has the authority to use it. So the Oyukoma Ntoma was reserved for the Otumfuo, and people of Bonwire began to go on record as the producers of the Oyukoma Ntoma to this date. You can go to the Menchia Museum and you will see the original Oyukoma Ntoma on display. It is something I highly recommend. If you happen to be in Kumasi, I highly recommend that you do take a tour to the Palace Museum and request to see the Oyukoma Ntoma and take pictures with it to tell the tale in homage. Right, the next thing we want to know about is the rivers surrounding Bonwire. So you told us already that there was one river, Abuelita, and the fish from here had killed the dog. Can you tell us a little bit about the other rivers? What's the history of the rivers and where do people from Bonwire get their meat, fish from? It's funny you will ask that question. So I told you there were actually 5 rivers. Abuelita, Ejapem, Abuapo, Aboyensuya, Abomapu. All 5 of these rivers we don't eat fish from in this village, Bonwire. That's the funny thing. None of these rivers have edible fish. You can drink the water, no problem, but the fish is not edible. The hunters did the buffer test and it killed all the dogs in all 5 rivers. Say that again, please. Well, folks, let's reiterate this. In this Bonwire village, there are 5 rivers. The water from all 5 of them is drinkable. Please don't eat the fish from them. You must check with the locals before you eat any fish in this town. It does not matter how old or appealing the fish is. Please don't eat it. Don't eat it. I've told you twice. Let me add it a 3rd time. Don't eat it. Doesn't matter. No, don't challenge this. Don't challenge this. Don't eat it. 5 rivers in this village. Drinkable water, but not edible fish. You know what's funny? Somebody recently came here and wanted to challenge this notion. He said it was outdated, it was silly, and yeah, he could eat it. He ate it, and guess what happened? Just as had been predicted, he also died. That has reaffirmed it for the locals, and we just don't eat the fish.
Wow.
So now it is established. We don't eat fish from the rivers. It's that simple. I mean, majority of people, when you know the legend, will not even try it. It's happened to people. It's happened to somebody before our very eyes. So most people are smart enough not to even attempt to challenge it. Okay. So our next question is actually around the chieftaincy of the place. You said that there was an original hunter who came here and started a settlement. Before other people came, did he become the chief of the village? What's the history? How does the chieftaincy in Bonwire work out? So who became the chief, basically? Okay, so if you know in the Akan system, we do have arrangements. So when he came here, he became the family head of the Asuna tribe, the Asuna clan. And obviously, the chief of the village comes from the Asuna family that he belonged to. But even within the Asuna family, there are castes, there are levels. So when people came, that system was used to elevate the chief. So it was agreed in the Asuna clan who the chief was going to be. It was selected from that family, and till this date, it is the Asuna family which rules over Bonwire. So still on the subject of chieftaincy, the current chief, well, how many chiefs have actually been in Bonwire in your history? Okay, there's been 17 chiefs. The current one is the 17th chief of Bonwire. The funny thing is, he's approaching his 20th year. His name is Nana Bobie Ansa II, and he is the 17th chief of Bonwire, approaching his 20th year of reign. Okay, our next question is about the age of the Bonwire township itself. How old do you think the township is? How long has it been here? Even if you're not able to give us an accurate number of years, an estimate would be very helpful. How old is Bonwire? Right, that is a difficult one to say accurately. But Kente, the cloth, is well over 400 years old. And it was not started as soon as the people came to live here in Bonwire. It was a few generations after the township had been set up that Kente started, and that's well over 400 years ago. Because we know it's over 400 years ago because the cloth was also linked in with the arrival of the slave traders. And so we know it predates 400 years. So at least, if you estimate, we would think maybe 1,000 years from the history and from simple estimates. They had been here a long time, had been living a long time before the Europeans came and slave trade started. But we did not document anything. We didn't put down dates. So it's only an estimate. And we think it might be at least 1,000 years. Thank you so much for that. So let's move on to the actual Kente cloth. I am fascinated by the Kente. Tell us a little bit about the history of Kente. What names of cloth do you have? Can you distinguish between the cloth? Oh yeah, every Kente we have has a name. It has an identity, and all the weavers know how to weave it. They know the colors, they know the patterns, and they can tell you exactly what's woven. It's not something we do randomly. In order to add something to our Kente repertoire, we have to go through a process. We name it, people learn how to weave it, and then it is done consistently. So let's take this cloth, for example. Okay, meet this baby. Do you remember the original cloth? The Oyoko Matuma, the one that was woven and sent to Menchia. This is not the original. This is the replica we keep here. This particular one is about 80 years old. Yes, 80 years old. We've kept it for so long, and this is exactly the same patterns, the same colors as the original Oyoko Matuma, which was given to the Utufo and is kept in Menchia. The next piece then. This one is called Sika Futru. Sika is money, and in Aka language, Sika is actually gold. This particular one was woven in homage to our name. Before we became Ghana, we were called the Gold Coast in the slave era because the land was rich, it was teeming with resources. And to date, very close to here, Obuasi, the gold mine, the gold fields exist. And so the cloth was actually made in homage, in acknowledgement of that value in our lands. Sika Futuru. Let's meet our next one. This next one is an interesting one because it actually has two names. There was an original name and there was a name change later. Let's start from the original. So in the year 1900, the British and the Asante Kingdom went to war. That's the war where the famous Ya Asantua led the Asante Empire into war and created such a resistance for the British. Anyway, at the end of this war, the Queen Mother, Obahima Ya Asantua, and Nana Seprempe were captured together with some of the people from the Asante Kingdom, and they were sent in exile to the Seychelles. Well, before they went, this was the cloth that had been given to Sir Nana Prempe, and this is the cloth he wore when he left on exile. So, obviously, he was departing on exile and he was going to board a ship. Ohene Afro Eshen. The king has boarded the ship. Ohene Afro Eshen. Obviously, they went to Seychelles. They didn't die in Seychelles. They married, intermarried, had more children. The family actually did spread. And as we know from the history, there was a return eventually back to Asante. And when he came back, Sir Nana Prempe made sure to wear the same cloth on his return. So Ohene Afroshen was when he left. When he came back, he actually came back with more people than he took with him originally. And they asked him, and he says, well, we have even more numbers left behind. Some people chose to come, some people stayed. We have become a dom, a bushia yedom. The family is now large. The family is a huge crowd. Ebusua Yedom, and that's the second name. So Ohina Froshen or Ebusua Yedom, because of the history and the reasons why the names are two. Oh, so the Kente can actually be named after people or events, because we've heard a Kente called Sakwadie, a Kente called Gifty Auntie, a Kente called Obama, and we know none of these people actually weave. So explain this phenomenon to me next. Oh yeah, you're right. So originally, when the cloth is woven, they are given traditional Akan names. So it's something to do with circumstances prevailing at the time or advice for young people. That's how the original naming is done. But when prominent people wear them, or people use them for prominent occasions, like the Obama one. Obama is the first American president. The cloth had a name which had something to do with prominent people. So when he became the president, it made sense for something which was for prominent people to be tagged to his name. So the cloth on the street has become known as the Obama. The Gifty Auntie is a similar one. Gifty is a well-known person. People have seen her wear it, people wear it, and it's the Gifty because it's tagged to her. So really, the Kente can be named for a variety of reasons. We can name Kente after you if we love you or hate you, or sometimes even as an insult, often as advice. So yeah, prevailing circumstances determine the name, and sometimes the names are actually agreed to be changed because something changed, something significant happened, a prominent person becomes associated with it, and that's how the naming of the Kente cloth works out. I hope you understand. Does it make sense, my brother? Our next exhibit is a special one. Its name is Emada, Ibimada, New Creation. This is because that the original colors I told you were the yellow, the green, the black. This is the first cloth which actually featured the blue color. By this time, the technique was improving. We had found the blue dye and blue yarn was available. So blue was actually introduced into the cloth. So as the craftsman was weaving, a neighbor passing by saw the cloth and said, "Hey, oh my God, is that blue in the Kente? But we've never seen blue in Kente before. Ebimada. It has never happened before. Emada. This is a new creation." So it came from a neighbor's surprise. This next one is called Adwene Asa. Ideas are finished. No more designs. This was supposed to be the ultimate Kente cloth. All the patterns and designs that existed in the Kente weaving industry when this cloth was made was actually mixed in with this one. Every pattern was used. It was supposed to be the ultimate, the bee's knees. Every pattern in existence was already in this Kente. Well, the thought was that there weren't going to be new patterns and that all the patterns had been generated. And so this was the be-all, end-all of the Kente cloths. Well, you know, posterity is always smarter. People become more creative over time. It threw down the gauntlet to people who were designers. And people actually came up with new patterns. People came up with new ideas after that. So it says Adwene Asa. The motif is finished. The designs are finished. No more patterns. But that was not quite true. We found new patterns and new designs after it. Our next exhibit is a record-breaking cloth. This cloth is called Toku Krantoma. Toku Akrantoma. Toku's farewell cloth. This is the legend. So the person who wove this cloth was actually the chief of Bonwire. The chief was weaving the cloth, and at that time, Obrikomfo, the Okomfo Anoche, the chief priest of the Asante kingdom, had actually risen, and he was performing miracles around town. And he came to Bonwire to visit. And yes, when he came to Bonwire, he went to see the chief weaving. He looked at the cloth and he predicted that the day that cloth would be woven and finished, the person weaving would also take their last breath. Now, Obrikomfo was somebody people respected, and so when Nana Tuku heard this, he abandoned the project, obviously in pursuit of longevity. He left it. He was not interested in finishing it because the legend was that when he finished it would be his last breath. When he had lived and he felt fulfilled and he thought that he would not mind exiting, he decided to finish the cloth. He wove it, he finished it, and just as was predicted, as soon as he took it out of the loom, as soon as the cloth was done, he took his last breath. And people were like, wow, that is Toku's farewell cloth. Toku nakratoma. This is how he said farewell to the world. It is a cloth, as I said, which holds the record. It holds the record for the longest time spent in a loom. Fancy the chief weaving this as a young man and finally finishing it off at the end of his reign on the day he passed. So that would have been quite a long time. And yes, Nana Tuku was not in a hurry to finish this cloth because he already knew the prediction. So he only went to finish it off when he felt comfortable. He had lived. He was satisfied. And if the legend was true, he would not mind. And that's when he passed. So Toku nakratoma, Toku's farewell cloth, a record-breaking cloth. So is this the original one that Nana Tuku wove? Oh, no. Of course not. This was woven by somebody. But okay, the legend, the prediction was for Nana Tuku, not the rest of us. The person who finished that particular one, the specific one, was Nana Tuku, and he passed. It was not a prediction for anybody who will mimic the cloth. So now we weave it, and no, the rest of us have not perished as a result. Right, this next piece is the treasure chest. A very valuable piece indeed. So when Bonwire learned how to weave the Kente, Bonwire people were not selfish. They took apprentices from all over the place and they taught their neighbors how to weave. They shared the knowledge freely. But the truth is, there were about 4 or 5 cloths that were hidden from the crowds. It was not taught to anybody else. And in fact, even here in Bonwire right now, the people who can actually weave this one will not be up to 7. Not all the weavers can weave it. It's difficult. The technique is tricky. It's impossible. What is normally done doesn't work. And no, it's almost impossible to imagine it to do it on your own. So this is the treasure chest. This is where you hide your knowledge. So people ask, wasn't that a bit selfish? No, not really. It was to preserve our heritage. We are the custodians of the Kente, and there should be something which distinguishes us from the crowds. Otherwise, anybody could usurp us. Anybody could even turn around and claim ownership. To this date, everybody knows that the home of the Kente is Bonwire. There is no doubt about it. And one of the decisions which preserves it is these designs that can only be done here in Bonwire by our master craftsmen. We reserve these to preserve our knowledge and to hold on to our heritage. It is a confirmation of ownership, if you like. And these are pieces you don't find a lot on the market. These are pieces that are expensive. The people who can weave it for you are very few indeed. And for that reason, this is the pride of Bonwire. Like I said, there are about 5 of them. You can meet more as we go along, but this is a very valuable piece of Kente. When you get your hand on it, you have met a master craftsman. Unique piece of artistry. Very special design. Nothing like any of the other Kente designs we make. This is our pride and our joy. This is what is reserved for people of Bonwire only. You can't get this anywhere else. You must come to Bonwire if you want this particular one. It is the treasure chest because that's where we keep valuable things. We keep it well because the things in here matter a lot to us, like these pieces. So how long does it take on average to weave one Kente cloth? Right, that differs. It differs a lot. We have different ways of weaving the Kente. And the style of weaving dictates how long it will take. We have single track, we have double, and we even have the triple. So depending on how the weaving is done, it may take from 2 weeks, anything up to 6 months. And if the person weaving is not particularly skilled, it could take a whole lot longer. So it's variable. Depends on the material, depends on the style, depends on the person weaving. And you can see it's actually very intricate. It's a complicated process. And yeah, if you are very skillful, you could do things quickly. Otherwise, it would take a little bit longer to weave. So now we know that there are types of Kente. Could you help us out and clarify? We have 3 main types. We have the Kente, Intiamu, and Ingumu. There is the Kente, which is the woven basic, the one we've been discussing all along. And sometimes, when the plain Kente has been finished, the wooden imprints will be dipped into the dye and imprinted onto the Kente, a bit like screen printing onto the Kente. The other type is the Ingumu. This is needlework. So not screen printing onto the surface, but needlework. The designs are actually done in by needle, incorporating into the Kente. So we end up with Ingumu. But all of them are Kente. The basic is the Kente. And we do all of them in Bonwire. You have to request what it is you want. You tell us the design and we will select the best method to create what it is you imagine for you. You imagine, we create, and we make you the Kente of your dreams. Thank you so much. We have enjoyed the lesson. We've learned so much. And I hope those of you at home have also learned from this. What we need from you is to share the video to all your network so everybody you know watches the video and learns from it too. Let's talk about the items which a person can select with the Kente right now. So at first we only had the woven cloth, and that is expensive. It takes a long time to weave and it takes a lot of yarn to produce, and it's expensive. Not everybody can afford it. Now we are coming to new ideas, new creativity, and we are able to make many items from the Kente. I mean, name it, and we currently have it. We have shoes, we have beads, we have jewelry, we have all manner of creative items which are made from Kente. So whatever your budget is, you will find some Kente artifact for you. We have the stoles that are quite popular on the international market. People use it extensively for graduation items. So you have some which says greetings from Ghana, welcome to Ghana, class of 2022, whatever you wish us to customize it with can be done for you. Your budget is your limit. Whatever your creativity suggests, we can meet it, we will make it for you. So do get in touch with us, come visit Bonwire, tell us what it is you want to have, and we will customize and send it to you. And even if you are not able to come to Bonwire yourself, you can contact and we will export it to you wherever you happen to be. Who are your oldest and youngest weavers in town? Do you have any children? Do you have elderly people who still weave in Bonwire? Interesting question. Yes, all manner of people in Bonwire weave. This is our main occupation here. We started very young. Most children will start maybe age 5, 6, working on the thread. And there's a boy I know who started learning how to weave at 6. I personally started learning how to weave when I was age 8. So some people come to weaving early. Some people take a long time to come to it. And we also have some people who remain in the loom well into their 90s. It is our way of life. This is what we do. Everybody works around the Kente cloth if you are from Bonwire and you stay here. This is our livelihood. We all feed off it. We start with the very young children. We work in various aspects of the Kente, and then eventually you stay there until you are not able to sit in the loom again. And that's usually at the end of the life cycle for majority of the weavers. So yeah, a whole range from as young as you can imagine to as old as you can imagine. All work in the industry, ply our art, carry it forwards, and establish the Bonwire name. Okay, so the looms you use for weaving the Kente, where do you get it from? Do the weavers make it yourselves, or do you have special carpenters who produce them for your specific purpose? We have many carpenters in town who can make it for the weavers. But the funny thing is, most people also prefer to do it themselves, especially the very experienced people. They know which kind of wood will help them stretch things out, what kind of weights they want to use, and what type of wood will support it. They go to the forest and they cut it themselves. So most people build the loom themselves. The really experienced ones actually do the whole frame themselves and make it comfortable and personalized to them. Others who want artistic work give it to the carpenters and they do it for them. So tell me, how challenging is this job? How long do most weavers sit in a day? Is it up to 1 hour? How many hours do they sit? And what's the challenge of doing the job? This is a demanding job. Physically, all aspects of your body will be taken up by the job. It involves a lot of sitting. It involves creativity. Your brain must be at work. Your eyes are at work. You are switched on the entire time you are weaving. And so it is difficult sometimes. You sit for long periods of time. Some people come here as early as 7 a.m. And some people don't leave until it's dark. The reason being that we are self-employed. We don't work for anybody. We take contracts and we execute the contracts. And in fact, it is almost a competition amongst the weavers. They notice who leaves for long episodes and, well, you are lazy. And we know who can sit down and weave very quickly. And those people are hardworking. And so after a while, when people are looking for hardworking weavers to give contracts to, those who are able to execute quicker are the ones who will enjoy those contracts. And so it's in every weaver's best interest to weave as many as they can so that they can continue to enjoy their livelihood. So this has been an enjoyable trip to Bonwire. We've seen the process of the Kente from beginning till end. We've listened to the history of the gorgeous town Bonwire, and I hope you've learned quite a bit. Hopefully, the value of the Kente has also gone up in your estimation because you realize how long it's done. They are individually, personally woven to suit an agenda. We will make a separate episode where we explain the colors of the Kente and the relevance of the pieces and when we use Kente cloths of what types for what. But today, hopefully, you've enjoyed your trip to Bonwire. Some of you may not have known of the existence. The Kente is not an African cloth. Let me just clarify. The Kente is a Ghanaian cloth. It's an Akan cloth. And its hometown, it's actually Bonwire in the Ashanti region of Ghana. I hope you've enjoyed this history lesson and you've also enjoyed watching the arts and the crafts. Catch you in our next episode and please share the video.